Well, welcome and thank you all for joining us today, this lovely sunny Friday. I'm Beck, Marketing Manager at Call of the Wild, and joined by my colleague Lynda Campbell, who's going to be taking us through some research that we undertook in December last year, and I've been working on getting the results out. That's on the truth about leading a multi-generational workforce. If you're not aware of us, we're Call of the Wild. We deliver experiential leadership and team development programs that have a lasting impact in the workplace. So Lynda Campbell is one of our senior leadership coaches. She has over 20 years in senior leadership roles and specialises in cultural transformation. So Lynda's worked with organisations such as British Gas, British Airways and Welsh Water to deliver some impactful cultural change, customer service strategies and leadership development. So Lynda's going to be leading the session, but we want this to be interactive. So if you have any questions, please do use the chat function, which I'll be monitoring. We'd really love to hear from you. And at the end of the session then, I'll share a feedback form and it would be much appreciated if you could take a few moments to fill that out. So there's lots to cover. So if there's anything, if you want any more on the topic after today, then please do drop us a line. I'll pop my email at the end of the chat. I think that's everything. So over to you, Lynda.
Thanks, Beck. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. So we've been working on this for a while, and one of the reasons that we undertook this research is from the organisations we've been working with. And often one of the pieces of work we do is ask the team that we're working with, is it different to manage different generations in the workforce? So it's been really interesting. We've gathered data along the way. We did this piece of research funded by the Welsh Government. But also we've been looking at some of the key researchers out there, which I'll share a screen at the end, which kind of backs up what they've been saying, but I think it takes it to another level. So I'll share with you our findings and what we've drawn from the findings. So it's not really, I guess what I'm ending up talking about, interestingly, is it's not really about the generations. It is more about leadership, because there's more that people consistently want across the generations than we probably thought previously. So let me kind of draw you through it. And we wanted to practice what we preach and be curious rather than be opinionated, which is why we did the research. Step out of the assumptions we might have had and step into evidence. That's what we talk about when we're working with many leaders. Is stay curious. So one of the things we were interested in is what actually unites people at work, and where the differences actually matter, and do they matter? So that's the kind of crux of today, which is what I'll share with you. So the dominant narrative, sometimes that it is the story many leaders inherit. It is that there are problems managing, there are differences managing the different generations, and they want something different from us. And I think what our research has found is that's not quite true. So the first thing we found is that generations agree on more than leaders expect. Across all age groups, employees place value on the same core leadership behaviours, the kind of human-centred behaviours: fairness, clarity and trust. The differences really show in how, as leaders, we show up every day. So where age-related differences appear, they are most often more about communication, the way we deliver feedback, and ways of working. But I think the important message here is it's not about values and it's not about commitment, that they don't see the differences there, and that's not what they want. They want those things for them. And the third thing is it's the leadership behavior that shapes the confidence, not the age. I think that's pretty key as we kind of unveil some of these results. So we want to get you involved, and as often as we can, we want people to tell us what they think. So Bex is just going to open up a quick poll on which age group do you think values work-life balance the most, and we'd just be really interested to know. So just have a go at that poll for us.
So we've got results coming in. They're still, they're changing. So I think people are still responding, but.
Okay.
So nearly everyone's completed that by the looks of things. So we're looking at 12% say under 25, 31%, which is the highest of this, say 25 to 34, 19% say 35 to 44, 4% say 45 to 54, 11% say 55 plus, and then 22% say they value it equal. So the 25 to 34 came out strongest in that.
Okay. Well, I guess you're not far wrong. I'll reveal those results in a second. Let me just share a couple more things before we talk about what we found in the research. The thing around shared motivation drivers, you know, what unites employees across all age groups. Work-life balance and financial reward are the top motivators for every age group. So slightly ahead in terms of the 25 to 34. So most of you who chose that, you are right in terms of that age group, but actually it's one of the top work-life balance and financial rewards, the top motivators across every age group. Purpose, impact, and feeling valued remain important throughout people's working life. I guess that makes sense. And stability and security increases in importance with age, but it never disappears for younger workers. And I'll show you some of the graphs in a second. So let me just move this on. So this would kind of pick it out in terms of you can see in some of the areas, what do you value most in a leader in the workplace? And fairness and consistency is consistently the highest. But interestingly, clear communication. Every time I work with an organization or any of the trainers in Call of the Wild, communication and clarity comes up as barriers or things that we don't get quite right. And I understand why, because it's so complicated in terms of getting a communication message, you know, complete clarity so that everybody understands it. But it's still coming up over and over again that clear communication is something that people value in the workplace, but we're not quite there on. But fairness and consistency called out all the time. And I don't think that's too much to ask of any of us in terms of leadership. Again, these humanistic behaviours that we've been talking about. But what unites employees across age groups? Fairness and consistency, clear and open communication, trust and autonomy. Trust is huge, and autonomy to do the job, you know, giving people the opportunity to make their own decisions within frameworks. The way we work is make decisions, but work within frameworks, and recognition and constructive feedback. So again, you know, there are more things in the workplace that unites the different age groups rather than divides them. We found very little divide in our research. So we're going to launch another poll for a second. Which age group do you think is most motivated by financial reward?
Sorry, bear with me. It's just taking a second to launch. There we go.
Oh, it's launched.
Okay. So the 26 responses so far, 28 responses. Under 25 is at 10%. 25 to 34 is at 34%. 35 to 44 excuse me, is at 13%, 45 to 54 is at 6%, and 55 plus is at 6%, and then all age groups equally at 27%. So people are sort of thinking there's the two that stand out is the 25 to 34 and then equally, which, as you can see.
Yeah, okay, so not far off. If you can see that, you can see the graph there, 18 to 24, financial reward is the highest, 44% if you look at the graph. but you can see consistently where it sits. So I guess we're not far off all age groups equally, but actually it's the lower age group where financial reward is the most important. But for me, what stands out in this slide and what we took from this slide is work-life balance. You can start to see that there is a shift in how people are viewing what's important to them. And the way I always look at it, we are living in a VUCA world now. We are living in a world that's 100 miles an hour, both in our home life and our work life. And therefore, what people are starting to shift towards across really all age groups, is work-life balance. And I think that's something that we need to think about. In are we when we are looking at work, and we call looking at when we work with organizations, look at the system. Think of your business as a system, and where have we got loops that break, and where have we got loops that work well? And I see more breakage lately in overloading leaders, or leaders jumping in and diving down and doing the job as well. So there's something we need to think about in terms of leadership skills, absolutely, but also why are leaders jumping down so often, and what are we missing in terms of giving people the autonomy and the capability to do the actual job and letting the leaders lead? And I know that sounds a perfect world, but how far can we get to? I think that's something for us to be considering. Then we asked around, what is your preferred working setup? And again, this was slightly different, I think. Hybrid working is a key benefit across all ages. And I'm not sure we thought that before this research, actually across all ages. So, note that fully remote is the lowest across all age groups, but particularly low in 18 to 34. Again, I'm not sure we thought that. Office-based is fairly even across all age groups, but note again, 18 to 34 still enjoy office working. Yet the narrative I always hear is the younger generation all wants some form of remote working. And I'm just not sure that's true, given again, these survey results. So that was, a little bit interesting in terms of understanding. And then we talked about what is your preferred communication. And again, I think this is quite interesting because although face-to-face is lower for 18 to 24-year-olds, it is still high in the preferred communication method, and it's the highest across all other age groups. For me, highlighting the importance of visible leadership. So one of the things there are many ways to communicate, and right message, right time, all of that. But I think what everybody is actually saying is they still value face-to-face conversations and this visible leadership, this connection, I guess, with their leaders. So one more poll. What do you think matters most for building social connection across age groups at work? And Bex is just going to launch this new poll.
Okay, so that's live. Getting some responses coming in. It's quite a mixed bag there. So 21% currently social events and team activities. 0% have said frequent meetings.
Yeah.
Shared goals and purpose, 22%. Feeling psychologically safe, 35%. So that's overwhelmingly the most popular. And being physically together, 16%.
Okay. So again, probably one of the subjects we work most on with organizations is psychological safety. So I think, what everybody's saying there in the poll is bearing out what they're seeing and wanting to focus on in the work environment. I guess what the poll is saying, day-to-day relationships and camaraderie is the most important social connection across all age groups, slightly lower for 18 to 24s. But as age increases, the social activities outside work become less and less important. And I can vouch for that, in terms of my career and what was important to me when I was a bit younger in social activity compared to what I want to do now. I preferred just that everyday connection. I guess though, what this is showing is there's more evidence that culture is built through the daily interactions, not things in event calendars. They work, they're needed, but what most people want is that day-to-day human connection, that feeling of, psychological safety. So I think that's interesting when we think about these things that we think we need to do in terms of engagement. What people value most is interaction with others. Um, let's just move that one on because I think we've moved that one on. Hang on a second. And then this was all around what workplace benefits matter most to you. And again, I think overall flexibility in the workplace is a benefit all age groups would want. But interestingly, I think this is really interesting. This must be a sign of the times. The younger generation see health insurance as hugely important, and we didn't see that coming in the research. So when we think, and I guess this is for, people and culture directors and leaders, when we look at benefits packages in the workplace and we look at gym membership and we look at all of those things which are great in the round, but actually in this day and age, and the VUCA world we're working in, it seems as though flexibility in the workplace, whatever that looks like, is the biggest benefit that everybody, would strive for. This thing about health insurance is interesting, and I wondered if the younger generation is seeing a health service that is very different to what we saw years ago, and therefore health insurance has become more important. So there's a few things to consider, I think, in terms of that particular slide and piece of research. So let's kind of summarize, what we think we've come across, and also, like I keep saying, built on the back of other research, which I'll share with you in a second. The shared preferences for human connection is what unites people across all age groups. Face-to-face communication remains the most effective leadership channel overall. One-to-one in-person feedback is consistently preferred. Social connection at work matters most to employees, regardless of age. So that's the day-to-day, camaraderie and interaction. So across generations, people want leaders. This is the way to summarize it, I guess. People want leaders who are present, fair, approachable, and human. That would be, how we would sum up what unites people. But where age-related differences do appear, is that while those, values are broadly shared, the preference is more for how leadership is delivered, right? So that's the distinction, I think. Older employees are more likely to prefer office-based work or structured hybrid models. Younger and early career employees show a stronger preference for hybrid working, particularly where collaboration is visible, and fully remote preferences increase slightly with age, although sometimes this seemed to be reflected by autonomy and role seniority rather than the generational, kind of differences. So the implication there is flexibility matters, but one size doesn't fit all. This would be thinking about things on an individual basis, which can be tricky. So the questions our research raises, I think, for leadership teams: are our leaders adapting how they communicate or assuming one size fits all? That is something that I think we really need to think about. Where might we be mistaking generational difference for behavioral difference? And I think that's quite key, because we make these assumptions about the different generations, and when we do some work with organizations on generational differences, we talk about the cultures and the eras that people were born into and how that forms them. It can form a work ethic, it can form all sorts of things. People born in, coming into the world of work during COVID, what, that's impacted them in the way they think about work, and that might have been wanting to work from home or whatever. People, baby boomers, post-war economic growth and everything else, job for life type thing. That was the way they thought about things. But are we mistaking these generational differences for behavioral differences? Because we're seeing behaviours across all generations that leadership need to intercept, and which leadership behaviours are non-negotiable across all age groups. And I think that's the key, actually. I think humanistic behaviours. The other thing that I kind of want to bring out is many organisations we work with, and this is true of my kind of my background as well. We often promote technically brilliant people into leadership roles, and then we forget that we need to give them the development in some of these skills. And I think that's what I'm seeing more and more of. It doesn't matter what type of company we're working with, whether it's a vet company, an accountancy company, it doesn't matter. They're fantastic vets, fantastic accountants. And then all of a sudden they're thrown into leadership because they were so technically brilliant. How do we help get these new leaders ready rather than, throw them in at the deep end and then help, expect them to just kind of swim? So there's something in, I think, that in terms of what we see in today's leadership world. So the research points to 4 clear leadership imperatives. Leaders need to be fair, and fairness is in the eye of the beholder, by the way. Fair, consistent, and transparent. Transparent is key. These behaviours are the ones that anchor trust. They need to lead visibly and relationally. We often talk about relational leadership, human-centered leadership, building these connections with other people, getting to understand other people at a much deeper level. So presence, conversations, and follow through matter more than any tools you can give somebody. Adapt delivery without compromising values. So this is things like communication delivery and feedback styles. They need to flex by individual, not by stereotype. Flex the delivery, not the standard. And then finally, focus on connection, not the generations, which is what I've been seeing. Leaders who create strong everyday connection with others reduce any generational friction quite naturally. So they're quite key leadership skills. And so some of the kind of, let's just sum this up. Key learnings on leading the multi-gen workforce. Most organizations can over-focus on generational conflict while underinvesting in the real leadership behaviours that employees of all ages want and say they matter the most. And there are some really good things that people can start to do in reducing generational differences anyway. But the leader would be, at the helm of that. The data suggests that organizations don't need different leadership styles. That's not what we talk about for different generations. They need leaders who can flex how they show up. And that's the skill. Flexing is the skill. Adapting is the skill. Knowing your people is the skill. And the leadership DNA or leadership that we would advocate at Call of the Wild is positive leadership. And anyone that's worked with us know that that's what we talk about. Positive leadership comes from positive psychology. It's all about understanding people, high emotional intelligence, fair consistency, all of the skills that we've been talking about. And I'm just going to end on this really, which is there is lots of research out there. We've used all this research. We use this research in the courses that we run, but we just wanted to go one step further because we wanted to see if they actually reverse it and see what unites the generations rather than always about what the differences are. So generational differences from the global workforce study we used and really kind of it was one of the basis of the work we've been doing. For anybody who likes their authors and their books, Amy Edmondson's got a fantastic book called The Fearless Organization, and it's all around psychological safety and human leadership. And her research really highlights that none of these are what we used to call soft skills. They're strategic skills and absolute needed in the world we live in today and for the next 10 and 20 years of leadership. And there's a couple more that I'm not going to go into them all. But they all highlight and they all kind of talk about this relational leadership, this positive leadership style. So we're going to kind of end there and open it up to questions. Really, that's we've unveiled the research. We think that we that we've built on what research was already out there, and we weren't interested in what unites people. But I guess to sum everything up, we need to invest in our leaders in the type of skills that every generation believes are important to them. And I will hand it over Bex to open up for any questions.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that. Yeah, any questions? Anything you wanted to, anything is sort of any surprises in that? Anything that, any concerns in that? Just let us know.
Either come off mute or you can pop your question in the chat. Did it surprise you?
Yeah. Oh, it looks like Robert's got a question.
Yeah. Hi, Lynda. Thanks very much indeed for that. It's a fascinating overview, really, and the concentration, I think, on. Can you hear me? Am I?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The concentration on the younger generation's emphasis on work-life balance, which seems to have, from what you're saying, going right the way through all sectors, really, all sections of age groups, all generations. Is it concerning, do you think, for the economy going forward, in as much as work-life balance is obviously laudable, but I'm just looking back now, and you always sort of look at your own sort of experience. You know, we had to, in the early days, work sort of like 12 hours a day, and we couldn't leave before our bosses left, and we have to demonstrate that we were ambitious and that we wanted to progress. You know, we never heard of anything called work-life balance in my early career. But is there a concern that the emphasis on work-life balance may stifle ambition within an organization, and don't leaders have to perhaps flex that sort of mindset in terms of how they lead their teams to actually instill that, whilst also being cognizant of the work-life balance issue?
It's a great point, and we often have some of these discussions when we're working with clients. I think there's a mindset shift in general about being impactful and being outcome driven, rather than having to work 12 hours in an office and wait for your boss to leave first because you don't want to leave, or you'll be seen as not ambitious. So for me, we need to start thinking about, and we need to almost like think about ambition in a different way. If I deliver great results, and I know this sounds really purist, but it's still it's part of thinking about the mindset shift. Trust has to come into it, and we need to move more to output driven, not input driven. So as an organization, we can monitor the inputs, which is feels to me too much like micromanagement, or we can monitor what people deliver and how they go about that. And that, for me, that's where the ambition sits, is what they actually deliver. Now, I'll give you an example. I'm far more productive in the morning than I am late afternoon. I'm actually quite productive in the evening because I enjoy sitting down and doing some of my work in the evening. Is that would getting the best out of me be 9 till 5 in an office or whatever, and staying as late as I possibly could and being tired, or manage me against when I'm productive the most and what I can deliver? Now, that doesn't work for everybody. I absolutely know that. But I do think there's a mindset shift required. It's the output that should be where we place the ambition.
Well, thank you.
So Liz said, really interesting. You're right to make us. You're right. We can make assumptions. How big was the sample size? So I've gone back in the text and just to sort of let everybody know, we surveyed 2,000 office workers across the UK with the help of one poll on this survey. And then Jackie has said, I find one of the biggest challenges is language. The younger team use slang terms and phrases that I don't always understand in language, if that makes sense. Which, yeah, I completely get.
Liz has got a hand up.
Liz has got a hand up. Fire away, Liz.
Thank you. I was just thinking about, I think it's Robert, isn't it? Robert's comments, because I think years ago it was a job for life. So you wanted to impress your boss. You needed to impress your boss, your company, because that's where you were staying.
Yeah.
But actually, you don't need to impress your boss if your next move is somewhere else. What you need to do is get your outcome so that you can describe what you do, etc., and move on. So
Yeah.
they would potentially be motivated differently,
Yeah.
because who cares if you're there at 7 a.m. and still there at 7 p.m.?
Yeah, that's a great point.
How do you describe it in your next job? Well, I stay all day, boss.
We also,
it won't count.
I think we also misinterpret, being there to being effective, being present to being effective, and being productive. They're two different things, and that's where the mindset shift has to come from. But also, there's this big trust piece, and you have to manage people individually. If you think people aren't performing and the outputs aren't there, that's a different conversation to somebody who is performing but working flexibly.
Yeah.
Great point.
Lynda, what was the biggest surprise of the research for you? What really did you look at and think, wow, I wasn't expecting that?
I think there were more similarities than differences in general. I think, and I think it's because I've been working with so many companies over the past few years that talk about the differences, and I'm not sure they're there. They are there, of course they're there, but they're not as great as we thought. And I think the biggest surprise for me was, universally people want similar things. They just want it delivered differently for some areas. So, it isn't that the younger generation don't want to be in the office. That's not what the data's saying. And it isn't that the younger generation all want to work remotely. That's not what it's saying either. And work-life balance is taking over pay. So that was a bit of a surprise for me. So yeah, I just think there's more similarities than differences. And I think that's what drove us to think this is actually more about leadership than it is about different generations and how we lead. And Barry, who, one of the other leadership trainers, always talks about know your people. And that's what this is really about. It doesn't matter what generation they are. Know your people. If you need to motivate, if you need to support somebody younger who might be struggling, that might be a different conversation, but it's still a conversation, and you understand what might be going on with them. Same as somebody older, somebody in the middle generation. It doesn't really matter. It's knowing your people.
And in terms, sorry.
No, go on.
I was just going to sort of supplementary in terms of the businesses that you work with and deliver sessions with and training for. Do you think that they are understanding or mindful of the research that you found out here? Is there a big job to do in general terms? It's an edit of that rambling question.
Yeah, I think we're starting that journey. I think some of them do, we're working closely with, because we've been talking to them, and we've had this research for a couple of months, so we've been injecting it into some of the work we've been doing. But I think we're starting on that journey. We are talking about this now more and more, and we are talking about what we call in Call the Wild, we call a leadership system. Leading self. If you can't lead yourself well, you can't lead others. If you lead others, you have to know them really well, and that leads you on to leading the business. And we're talking about that more and more now, but really using this research because we know more, and including not just our research. I know there was 2,000 people, but the other research bodies we've used along the way back up something very similar. This just goes a little bit more on what unites them rather than what makes them different.
Fascinating. Thanks. You're pioneering then, Lynda.
Call of the Wild, a pioneering. We love that.
Quite right.
Okay, well, if there aren't any more questions, I will we'll leave that there, and I'll just pop my contact details, and also if you wouldn't mind just filling out the feedback form, that would be really helpful. And yeah, like I said, if you have any questions on any of this, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. And it was lovely. Thank you so much for joining us. It's lovely to see so many of you today.
Thanks,
and get out and enjoy this lovely weather.
Have a good weekend. Take care.
Have a great weekend,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
Good to see everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Could I
Bye.
stay and ask a question? Is that okay?
Sure, yeah.
The leadership system, is that from somewhere?
No, we've designed it ourselves. So We talk about everything when we work with organizations, it's normally over like a 6 to 8 day, over a year.
Yeah.
And what we found in the last couple of years is that we need to go in really heavy in the beginning on leading self,
Yeah.
because it's not there, really, I mean, really deep growth mindset, emotional intelligence, really knowing yourself and who you show up under pressure and everything else. And then if we get that right, and often we haven't, it's not been right in organizations, you don't earn the right to lead others. And so what happens then is, if we can get that right and get people to self-reflect a lot more than they do,
Yeah.
They earn the right to lead others and they gain that respect. And then we go in much heavier then on how to lead a team, how to bring people together, how to unite them, all of those things. And then what we want people to think about then is, if you lead yourself well and you lead your team well,
Yeah.
even though you might not be leading the business, you need to lead the business, as in, how you lead change, how you
Yeah.
lead culture, all of that. So that's kind of what we've designed over the past couple of years, because it's what we found is required. And then again, like, taking in lots of the research. So that's what we use now.
So I work for HMPPS, the Prison and Probation Service, and our leadership code is leading me, leading others, leading HMPPS, which is exactly that. That's why I was wondering if it was like some theory that had come from somewhere.
No. I get it. But when you think about it, it just makes absolute sense. You start here, then you lead the team, and then you lead the business. So, and also in terms of skill sets, it feels like it's the right way to build it.
Yeah. Because
I
worked somewhere else and they parachuted the technical people in. They did structure change and said, "You're now a line manager for him."
I know.
And he was like, "I didn't want to be a line manager. I wanted to be a technical developer."
And to be fair, Liz, that's where we're finding the biggest challenge is, and it doesn't matter which technical ability it is. It just doesn't matter. That we're promoting technical people. And then, like exactly what you said, they're now leading people, and we have to strip it back, and we have to start right at the beginning. So those technical people are often brilliant at change, or brilliant at, continuous improvement, which is leading the business part,
machiney type, systemy things.
But we've got to come right back to the beginning. But the one thing we have been, I think this is interesting. The one thing we have done is that we've started to teach people to think about their organization more like a system, a bit like systems thinking. But we talk about where behaviors cause bad loops in systems. And that depersonalizes everything, and helps us think about differently about our behaviors and what they cause. So that's been, quite a bit of an interesting kind of piece we've been doing for the last 6 months.
Can I share your slides with my HR team? Is that okay?
I'm sure you can. Just Mark, I'm sure that's fine.
Yeah, Beck, you posting this video, and then so everybody will have sight of the webinar, and then yes, if you want a copy of the report, we'll circulate the report in full as well.
Lovely, because I think, I work in HR, and I think we still make assumptions about what it is and what people are, and and I was thinking the link to bias when they're recruiting and things, not my HR team because we don't recruit, but thinking about how we make assumptions about the person in front of us. Or what they can and what they can't based on who's around you or who you know. And
I agree.
I mean, I think as Lynda said, we all went into this with our own expectations, which were completely changed by the research. So I can see definitely if you're actively in it, then it's a challenge to get over your own experiences maybe.
Because we've tweaked what we deliver, because we used to deliver a program on managing multi-generation in the workforce, but we've changed up. We still talk about it, and there is a relevance, because we talk about it more in terms of not judging and making assumptions about different generations, because the era and the culture they were born into would form part of
some of it.
Yeah, and every one of them has every one of the generation. So what we do is we kind of use it as part of, you know, an integrated leadership piece now.
Yeah.
Because we think what's more important is these leadership behaviours that we think are missing or not, you know, not out there enough, because that's what every generation wants. Yeah. So it has changed what we do, I guess.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Liz.
Yeah.
Nice to
Have
see
a
you.
lovely
Thanks for
day.
joining
Have a
us,
nice
and thanks
day.
for your questions.
Yeah, good to see you, by the way, Liz.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.